Good evening, I'm Tips Mahoy and this is ArthIntel Evening Edition. Coming up, Kyiv pushes back on Iran's victim claim after Ukrainian drones strike on Caspian Sea ship, 30 Minnesota water systems targeted in cyberattack. A lover of life, Seattle pays tribute to food festival shooting victims. That plus a check of the weather across the country. Ukraine is pushing back against Iran after a weekend drone strike on an Iranian-flagged cargo ship in the Caspian Sea. Iranian state media says the ship, called the Anna, was carrying steel cargo when it was hit, and that the attack killed 23-year-old crewman Nima Moradi and wounded others. But Ukraine's ambassador to Israel says the vessel actually contained drone and missile components bound for Russia, not civilian goods, and that Ukraine expects to strike similar targets again. Ukraine's acting foreign minister, Andriy Sybiha, said Iran has no standing to claim victim status, calling Tehran a direct accomplice to Russian aggression, while Iranian official Ebrahim Azizi warned on X that Iran does not leave its actions unanswered. Minnesota IT Services says more than 30 community water systems across the state were targeted in a coordinated cyberattack between Sunday and Monday. 4 cities, Plymouth, South St. Paul, Maple Plain, and Braham, publicly disclosed the attacks, saying impacts were limited or mitigated, and residents could continue normal water use. The Minnesota Department of Health says it is not aware of any municipality asking residents to alter their drinking water use as a result. State officials say they've activated cybersecurity response efforts and are working with federal and private partners to investigate and strengthen protections for critical infrastructure. Seattle is in mourning after a deadly gunfight Sunday at the Bite of Seattle Food Festival left 3 people dead and at least 4 injured. The victims were identified as 19-year-old Junior C. Nico Simo, 44-year-old Carlos Israel Sanchez Villalba, and 56-year-old Ashley Whitehead, who, according to her family, was shot while waiting in line with her daughter for cotton candy. Police say Simo was believed to be involved in the gunfight, while Villalba and Whitehead are not suspected of any crime. Investigators say the shooting was a targeted act of gang violence, and a 15-year-old is in custody while police continue searching for other suspects. ArthIntel Headline News is brought to you in part by Toolbox Development, AI web development and marketing. Learn more at toolboxdevelopment.net. We'll be right back. President Trump remembered Senator Lindsey Graham as a giant of the United States Senate during a funeral service at Washington National Cathedral. Graham, a South Carolina Republican who served since 2002, died earlier this month at age 71 of an aortic dissection, just after returning from a trip to meet Ukrainian President Zelensky in Kyiv. Trump, Vice President Vance, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, and President Zelensky were among those attending, reflecting Graham's influence as a leading voice on foreign policy. Graham's sister, Darlene Graham, who has been appointed to fill his Senate seat, was also present at the service. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was kept largely out of public view during his meeting Tuesday with President Trump, entering the White House through a side door and holding over an hour of talks behind closed doors. A White House official said the meeting was closed to press because Trump considers it a working meeting, while Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt called the talks with Netanyahu and Ukraine's Zelensky positive and productive. The secrecy comes amid reports of a crumbling relationship between Trump and Netanyahu, with Trump reportedly calling him crazy during a June dispute over the Iran deal, and more recently overriding Netanyahu's objections to selling F-35 fighter jets to Turkey. Netanyahu, who faces an election in 3 months, has repeatedly sought Trump's endorsement, but the president has so far only called him a great wartime prime minister without formally backing him. A leaked Senate Republican messaging document, obtained by the Daily Caller, reveals internal guidance on how lawmakers should handle questions about the Save America Act and the filibuster. The document instructs Republicans to reject what it calls a false choice between President Trump and Senate leaders, and to express support for both, even as it acknowledges the party lacks the votes to pass the act or end the filibuster. Politico's Jordan Carney separately confirmed the messaging, which also includes guidance on discussing Iran. But according to an unnamed Republican staffer who spoke to the Daily Caller, the strategy amounts to Republicans saying they support the act while being unwilling to change anything, sacrifice vacations, or threaten committee seats to advance it. An immigrant-led business group says it plans to sue New York City over Mayor Zoran Mamdani's plan to open 5 taxpayer-funded supermarkets, arguing the $70 million project will unfairly compete with existing stores. The Multicultural Business Coalition's board has voted to file the lawsuit, according to Chairman Frank Garcia, who told the Post the mayor doesn't seem to want to sit down with us. Mamdani this week detailed a 30% discount on staples like produce, meat, milk, cheese, and bread at the new stores, the first of which is set to open next year in the Bronx. Some Harlem bodega owners, including United Bodegas of America President Radhames Rodriguez, say they fear being put out of business by the discounted prices, while Mamdani insists the city stores won't compete with bodegas on items like alcohol, cigarettes, and lottery tickets. ArthIntel Headline News is brought to you in part by Toolbox Development, AI web development and marketing. Learn more at toolboxdevelopment.net. We'll be right back. Visa is laying off 7% of its employees, with affected staff being notified starting Tuesday. In a memo, CEO Ryan McInerney said the company must evolve how it works, adding that AI is helping accelerate that shift. However, a person with direct knowledge of the matter told CNBC that AI wasn't the sole driver behind the cuts. Visa, which had about 34,100 employees at the end of its last fiscal year, says it wants to invest more in growth areas including affluent customers, cross-border activity, business payments, stablecoins, and geographic expansion. The company reports quarterly earnings after the market closes Tuesday. ArthIntel Headline News is brought to you in part by Toolbox Development, AI web development and marketing. Learn more at toolboxdevelopment.net. We'll be right back. Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti says his league is still pushing for a 24-team college football playoff starting in 2027, and says the Big Ten could scrap its conference championship game to make it happen. Petitti told ESPN the conference is committed to unwinding its TV deal with Fox for that title game if needed. According to Petitti, the Big 12, ACC, and Notre Dame back the 24-team format, but the SEC still favors a 16-team field, and any expansion requires SEC and Big Ten agreement. CFP leaders are expected to discuss the format further at a meeting in August, with another gathering set for September at Big Ten headquarters. The Washington Commanders are turning to former All-Pro receiver Wes Welker to lead their tight ends group. The move comes after the team fired previous tight ends coach Ben Steele on Monday, following his arrest for suspected DWI in Loudoun County back in June, where he also refused breath and blood tests and faces charges of resisting and obstruction. Coach Dan Quinn says Welker's official title hasn't been finalized, but he'll be in charge of the position. Welker, a 3-time NFL receptions leader and 5-time Pro Bowler during his playing career with New England, joined Washington's staff last year and had already worked with the tight ends this spring during Steele's suspension. ArthIntel Headline News is brought to you in part by Toolbox Development, AI web development and marketing. Learn more at toolboxdevelopment.net. We'll be right back. And finally, here's a look at temperatures across the country right now. It's hottest in Phoenix at 104 degrees, while Chicago is the coolest spot on the board this evening at 67. That's ArthIntel Evening Edition for now, 10 stories, coast to coast. I'm Tips Mahoy for ArthIntel, signal over noise. Keep your feed clear, enable notifications, subscribe, and head over to arthintel.com to read the full context behind today's news.